Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from all over the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors. This is episode 18 of our podcast, where we really shine a light on what's happening in Web3 and the blockchain and the potential that the Web3 blockchain really presents to creators in this new frontier of the digital creator economy that we're working on. And for episode 18, we are really excited to have Steve McCloskey here with us talking about science in Web3, science on the blockchain, and really the potential for a decentralized scientific community to maybe break down some barriers and find a way to create a really new avenue for scientific discovery. And I find it really exciting. So thanks, Steve, for joining us here today. How are you doing?
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, doing well, doing
Good,
well. Yeah,
good.
definitely all about, decentralized science inside of the science metaverse. And yeah, happy to talk more.
I love it. My perspective on what could potentially be the implications of decentralized science, and you can let me know, Steve, if I'm on board or way off base. But when I look at what's really potentially going to happen here in the Web3 space and science, and where the blockchain can help with scientific discovery, I look at two key factors, which are accountability and transparency, right? And when thinking about accountability and transparency, it's like, in scientific discovery, obviously there's peer review, and there's the idea that there are, a lot of scientists competing to make sure that what they're discovering is in fact accurate, right? But in that process, there is sometimes what some might call elitist kind of viewpoints that maybe crowd out new discovery, So I think about a scenario where someone discovers something that's maybe somewhat controversial and tries to bring it to a group for peer review study and just gets shot down, from the outset, and really doesn't even get that opportunity to get their foot in the door, maybe. So in a decentralized community or in a decentralized environment, maybe that can be put on the blockchain and reviewed by, any scientists that have access to this blockchain and be able to give feedback. So there isn't that kind of gatekeeping, essentially. So that's one avenue where I see the potential for blockchain to really maybe redefine, how scientific discovery kind of works and operates. But then there's also the transparency account side of it, right? Where I think just the fact that it's happening on the blockchain and will be viewable, maybe even by non-scientists and regular people, can have big implications for people who are inquisitive and just want to learn, hey, what are scientists working on these days? What's the cutting edge? And being able to put that on a transparent blockchain and not have it, behind layers of maybe academic papers or specific kind of, paywalls that you need to get through to get access to that information. And I know in some cases, some of these scientists who put out these journals, if you actually just reached out to them directly, they might just give it to you, right? But if you go through academic, or you try to get it through regular means, they'll charge you a bunch of money, or they'll just ignore you. So that's where I see, the real opportunities for Web3 and for blockchain to really shift the floor and the ground of science and scientific discovery. And I think we're at a time in social evolution where, scientific discovery is being questioned a lot. And I think that the more transparency we can get, the more accountability we can get, the better. So I think it's really exciting. And then, of course, there's a third element, which is the metaverse. Those of us who, or anybody who's watching on the Twitch stream, will be able to see that we're sharing some content from Nanome, which is Steve McCloskey's company that he's pulled together and or founded. And it's really interesting kind of micro or nanotechnology, microbiology that they're doing in VR and in the metaverse, essentially at a digital scale, allowing them to really, look at details in a lot more close-up view in the VR space. So that's what we're here kind of talking about, looking to hear from Steve McCloskey and learn, how his technology and what he's working on is really, pushing the evolution of science into this new world. So thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining us. And maybe before you tell us a bit more about Nanome, maybe just share a little bit about your background and maybe what brought you to the blockchain and Web3 specifically. But thank you, Steve, for joining us. And yeah, welcome.
So yeah, grew up in LA. Yeah, definitely was a big gamer. Yeah, I think as many others were in the
Nice.
90s and 2000s and all that. Was also into science as a kid, kind of thought about being a chemist or different things and like curing cancer, kind of had that going on in my family a bit and I feel like that was, somewhat impactful, but it all came together in college where I was studying nanoengineering at UC San Diego. And going through the whole process, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. I was into video games, and the graphics weren't as good as the video games. So I started looking into like, all right, 2D graphics, like how do we make molecules better, and how do we actually get a better interface to get hands-on ideally and be like real nano engineers. So that was the impetus of like ordering all the virtual reality stuff and like getting started with building virtual reality based tools. But also at the same time during college, I'd been, the crazy Bitcoin guy, going around like chatting with people and like doing stuff with local Bitcoin and just, I don't know, it was a really small community and it just feel like it was, I don't know, different back then. Like
So
now it feels like everyone knows about it. They, have their own opinions about it. But yeah,
so
back
you would
then it
say
was
you're
just
one of the
Wild
early
West.
adopters, early Bitcoin adopters?
I don't know, something like a late early, I guess, because I found out about it in 2011, but I didn't like really adopt or like buy any until like a little bit later. So yeah, I don't know, somewhat early, I guess, in like 2012, 2013.
No doubt. Yeah, that's definitely early to me. I mean, I probably bought my first little bit of Bitcoin in like 2015, but I
Okay.
wasn't seeing the real implications of the peer-to-peer technology, and the potential that the
Yeah.
blockchain brings. I think I only truly understood that last year, and it was kind of the metaverse conversation. It was the collecting digital art and actually owning that digital art in
Mhm.
my wallet, that really made it click for me. And seeing the people that benefited from it, that was the other part of it. Seeing, the artists who sold their art on the blockchain actually changing their lives, like in Africa or India, or, different places where they really needed the money. That's what got me fully on board. And now I'm here running my own Web3 podcast. So yeah, it's exciting times for sure. So maybe before,
Awesome.
first maybe tell us about Nanome. So how did you build Nanome? How did you create Nanome as a nanotechnology platform, and what problem is it solving?
Yeah, so yeah, I built it to solve, my problems that I had as a nano engineer, which is, making little edits on molecules and atoms is really frustrating with a mouse and keyboard. And, visualizing complex three-dimensional nanoscale molecular, files and things like that on a 2D monitor is also really frustrating. You need to like keep rotating your mouse to get any, understanding of the full 3D. So I'd actually tried VR, I guess in like 1997 or something when I was a little kid at Six Flags. And yeah, I think that kind of stuck with me. So I was always kind of like into 3D a bit more and like, why aren't my video games like more 3D like that one thing I tried?
Immersion, right?
Yeah, it's immersive. Like, you can't really replicate that without actually putting the headset on.
Mm.
So yeah, I got the Oculus DK2, started getting to work on building some prototypes. Started working with molecular researchers, working on pharmaceutical drug development, which I only knew a little bit about it at the time, but I'd say now like after having I don't know hundreds of VR sessions with dozens of different scientists, and actually understanding their research on like this person has a doctorate, they're an expert in this structure, they're giving me every like nuance of the detail of what's going on. Like I feel like I've learned a lot more since
No
then.
doubt. No,
Yeah.
that's
But yeah,
amazing.
we got started with the platform and then started working with biotech and pharmaceutical companies to help them make better medicine. And yeah, it's been really, really awesome journey.
So how long has Nanome been functioning, and how much are you benefiting from, kind of, or maybe not benefiting? I don't know. Like, is the evolution fast enough in VR, I guess is the question, because it's clear, even just looking at the last 2 years, I think VR
Yeah.
has come a long way. But I imagine for the type of nanotechnology, really like micro kind of work that you're doing, you guys need pretty much the best possible 3D rendering, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do all the 3D rendering, with our in-house development, but yeah, we optimize it. Like we work on the standalone VR headsets that, like the Oculus Quest 2 or HTC Vive Focus 3, prominent standalone headsets at the time, 2022 here.
Right.
So yeah, like you could definitely hook it up to a computer and get more juice, more power, and see bigger structures. But if you're just working on like small molecule drug design or like engineering a single enzyme or something like that, yeah, you could use the standalone VR headsets, and it actually does a really good job.
Wow. Okay, so you think right now the technology's not too limited? You guys are off to the races. You're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the case. 2015, it was kind of early. Like, yeah,
Mm,
you had to have these like big computers and all these sensors and all these things to set up. But
right.
nowadays, like, yeah, just throw a couple quests in my backpack, and now I could like put one on, put somebody else into VR. Like, we're now collaborating and in VR, even though we're
That's
right next to
amazing.
each other. So, yeah, I think the technology finally hit these mass adoption points, and we're just starting to see the little trickle into mass adoption with the Quest 2, and
Yeah.
it's just gonna keep getting bigger and better.
Yeah. I'm hoping we get more competition in the VR headset space too, but I know that Meta's a big
Want to get
one. They
the
got too much
TikTok
budget.
headset? Yeah, no, for real. ByteDance acquired this company called like Pico Neo,
Oh
and
yeah.
so yeah, the Pico Neo 3, like it looks the same as a Quest 2. It's just like,
All
yeah,
right.
instead of logging in with Facebook, yeah, maybe someday you'll be logging in with TikTok.
TikTok. Oh no, it's
Yeah, I
just as
know, right?
bad.
So hey, there's your competition. There's
Yeah,
your
you trade
competition.
one
That's
evil
what you
for the
get. You
other.
want a competition? You got the the little knockoff.
That's what happens. Eh? That's the competition
Yeah,
I'll get. Be careful what you ask for, right?
yeah, exactly.
No, that's interesting. All right, so very cool. So on the one side, obviously, being able to just blow up these, particles, like you said, enzymes, to be able to look at them and manipulate them in VR is a whole new world, and like you say, way better than the 2D screens. But I guess you also get that added component of being able to join others from other places in the world. Is that part of what Nanome offers as well, as far as like that metaverse angle? It is something I always like to emphasize on Web3 Warriors, is just the fact that the metaverse is truly breaking barriers, right? Like it's bringing everyone together. It's not a difficult thing for people from different corners of the world to just join together in one room in the metaverse. So is that something that you found with Nanome as well that you're trying to address, as far as
Yeah.
doctors in different areas collaborating?
Especially during the pandemic, right? Yeah, we were all working remote. We were all, trapped inside or whatever in various countries, but everyone was still publishing the research about COVID, publishing new structures, the spike protein, the main protease of the coronavirus, like all these new structures that could be targeted. And we were going into VR with researchers, and we were helping researchers collaborate remotely around the world. Really like the United States, Australia, all over Europe, yeah, in parts of like Southeast Asia. Just like if you look at the map of all of our users, like it really is global, and these people like have connected with each other. Like we've even had researchers in Australia connect with the researchers in like Sweden, and like just chat because they're both online on the same platform. They wanted to just share a bit about their research.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's really cool to see all that come together.
That's amazing. So, oh wow, I guess like that's really what's. I mean, I say that the gaming and the digital space is what pulled me in, which is true. But also just that impact of the sales. Seeing people on other side of the world being able to collaborate and kind of show their work in the metaverse, and then actually make
Mhm.
sales in the metaverse to benefit, and being able to send the money directly on the blockchain. No crazy wire transfers with all kinds of ridiculous fees attached to it and things like that. So that's what I look at on the NFT side. And I think
Yeah.
you've probably been just kind of seeing that international digital borderless world, for a while now, I guess, right? Like that's kind of been a big part of what you're working on. And then, like you say, COVID hits and you realize just how needed that is, right? So where does the blockchain kind of come in to what Nanome is doing? And do you think that, it's going to offer kind of an additional value to your company, or how do you see the blockchain
Yeah.
integrating into what you're doing?
So I think you had a cool point about like, enabling people to monetize and become creators that are actually creating value for society. So we had a similar idea of like, all right, we get all these people in virtual reality. We could get them understanding science more, and we could then do crowdsourced drug discovery. And I think a big problem with crowdsourcing drug discovery is that each molecule that you create, if you just manipulate a little carbon into nitrogen, or but just like a single atomic detail, that could be the difference between the drug working and being safe and effective, and the drug not working and being not safe or not effective. So, really you need to give the proper acknowledgement to the people that make every single edit to this. And so the way that we were thinking was, all right, if we run like crowdsourced competitions where people could then design their own molecules that are supposed to interact with a particular protein target, like a COVID protein that will, if you target it, it causes it to stop working and stop replicating and all that, right? Then you could hopefully get to cures a lot quicker. And if something like, and we would say this before the pandemic, like if something like a pandemic happened, like how do you rapidly mobilize a bunch of people from around the world to all come up with a solution together? And really the way that we saw that happening is through the blockchain, where every time you design a new molecule, you would hash it on chain. So you would take a hash and then publish a hash on chain, and then have the reference stored somewhere else like IPFS. And then you would kind of run these little like crowdsourced tournaments where different people are contributing and different people are like building off of each other's molecules. So if somebody publishes a molecule and then you say, oh, that's good, but I want to edit that carbon into the nitrogen, and then you kind of make a branch and you give them credit, for coming up with the original molecule, but then you also branch it out and you create your own molecule.
And that's all recorded automatically, right, on the blockchain?
So yeah, this is how we built the Matrix platform. So yeah, exactly. So every time you would upload a structure, then it would hash it on chain and be a part of the tournament. Be recorded like that. So yeah, that was kind of the big impetus of us getting into blockchain. But I think it goes a bit beyond that, because it's like once you mint a new chemical on the blockchain, and you could also mint as an NFT. We think that's a really cool concept as well. Then it could plug into other marketplaces and other channels and other places in the DeSci slash DeFi world out there. So like the way we're seeing it is we just want to be the hub for creation. Virtual reality is a great creation medium, just like Photoshop might be a good creation medium for NFTs. You could use virtual reality in our program Nanome to actually design molecules, and once you design the molecules, then you would then publish them and try to share them, and eventually, right, if this molecule is successful, maybe you want to spin up a DAO to then like test it and actually manufacture it.
Wow.
And get it to people, right? Like we see that as like the far future.
Yeah,
right?
is that something that Nanome would like kind of oversee, or it's just kind of a recommended direction for people to take possibly?
We just want to build the tools and the infrastructure. Like
Yeah.
I think a little bit of eating our own dog food and like using the tools and the infrastructure to like do cool science also makes sense for us.
Yeah, I
But
want to.
really, like we're building tools.
No doubt. No, it's fascinating. I want to pick up on what you said there about, Photoshop is used to build NFTs, and so Nanome is built to use nanotechnology or nano level medicine or
Nanoscale
chemicals.
design. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so like it doesn't need to be like nanotech or nano, whatever. Like everything that's molecules is just it happens to be at the nanoscale. So
Right.
the whole name of Nanome is just like everything at the nanoscale, which it does include things like material science and other like nano particle nano industries.
Mhm.
But where we mostly focus on is just like nanoscale biology, which is structural biology, biochemistry, like DNA, RNA, proteins, small molecules, ligands, peptides, like all of those types of things.
Those
That's
are all
where
things that
our
I
core
didn't know anything
focus.
about before COVID. And I
Oh
feel like I've
yeah,
heard of in the news
yeah. It's
now.
like now we're all
RNA, I've heard of
experts, right?
RNA. I know RNA. Feeling like a scientist because of all this stuff I'm hearing. Yeah, that's interesting. So basically, yeah, molecular level, right? Essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
being able
and
to
up,
take these,
like
creations. So do you see an almost artistic side of this type of work when you're like dealing with molecular level kind of science and building these solutions? And what was the I guess troubleshooting before the blockchain, like before this solution that you've identified, where people are being able to make additions, but edits on a new chain, right, without actually necessarily having to impact the original concept? That's what you're saying, right? So they would break off like on a new hash and offer their edits or their version of the same molecule. And like, how did that process work before? Was it just troubleshooting, or they'd have to like test it on live subjects, or?
Yeah, so to, first off, like, we got our start with the art department as well as like different departments around UC San Diego. Like, we actually were in an art studio, and like a lot of the impetus of like making this more accessible was to try to get like artists and other people like into virtual reality to actually like work with molecules. So we
Cool.
still think that's like a super cool concept, and we support that. We also have a free version of the app that we try to get out there to the masses and like really democratize
Oh,
access to
nice.
like
What's the
powerful
website for that
scientific
so our
tools.
listeners can check it out?
Yeah. I mean, if you search Nanome on Steam or on Oculus, or if you're on Quest like App Lab, yeah, like it's there.
There you
You can
go.
just download
Nanome
it.
on your chosen VR platform. Check it out.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
or you
see
go
it.
to
It just looks very artistic.
nanome.ai/setup.
Yeah, it
Hey,
looks
sorry,
very
what?
artistic to me, so that's why I asked that. But that's cool. So even
Yeah.
from your inception, it was kind of viewed as a also an artistic tool.
Well, there's a lot of like design components that just go into like making a good VR XR platform. And so yeah, like you need some like creativity when you're breaking new ground, because like a lot of the interfaces and like interactions and all that, like a lot of it was pretty new when we started. Like now there's somewhat of a standardized way that a lot of people build their apps in terms of like menus, how you interact with things, but it's not completely standard. Like it's still a little bit of the Wild West in terms of like 3D UI and
Right.
UX.
And those UIs can make or break, or UX can make or break a
Very
platform for
much.
sure. Doesn't matter how
Definitely.
useful or strong your actual tool is. If it doesn't look
Yep.
user friendly, people just take off the headset or close the
Yeah.
app right away. Right.
But yeah, on your other question, like what were people doing before? There's actually a cool group called Fold It. Sorry, yeah, Fold It. So Fold It was an application. I think it's still around, where like gamers would like crowdsource protein folding, and like using their mouse and keyboard, try to basically predict the structure of a protein. Now we have cool stuff like AlphaFold,
Hmm.
so it's not really as important. But I believe, so I heard that this lab also had the same idea of crowdsourcing small molecule drug development, and they ran into roadblocks with the university because of the intellectual property. Because if you crowdsource the protein being folded, nobody owns, oh, I folded this over here and that over there. Like the protein's the protein, you're just trying to predict how it might be.
Right.
You don't own every step of it. But if you're designing a new drug compound, you do own everything, or at least you should own everything. And
Hmm.
I believe the university wanted to have all drugs made be owned by the university.
Of
And
course.
the professor, I believe, was just like, nah, like people should own the drugs. And then they were like, well, how do you do it? So we learned this story a little bit into our journey of like crowdsourcing drug discovery when we told a former grad student of that lab what we were doing, and they were like, oh yeah, we tried it, but all these roadblocks. And
Hmm.
the biggest thing that blockchain offers is immutability and accountability.
Yep.
So, who created what when, and can you get to the original creator and prove that, yeah, the original creator is the original creator? Like I don't know how deep into like this whole science thing you are, but have you heard of Rosalind Franklin?
Vaguely. For some reason the name sounds familiar.
Most people haven't. Most people haven't. Have you heard
Okay.
of like Francis and Crick?
No.
Okay, well, most people have. I guess, with science. So Francis and
Is that the
Crick
DNA
are
creators?
what?
Are those the guys who found DNA?
They are. Exactly.
Okay,
Okay,
see,
so you
there we
do
go.
know it, right?
I knew there was two guys. I just forgot their names.
Yeah, yeah. So they're famous for the discovery of the structure of DNA. But the person who actually like ran the experiments and determined the structure of DNA was none other than Rosalind Franklin,
Ah,
who most people don't know and have never really heard of. And so yeah, there's all these instances of people not getting the right credit that they deserve for the research and the work that they're doing.
hmm,
And that was also a big part of blockchain, right? Like if you publish your work in little like micro publications, like you don't ever need to have a full paper. Maybe you just kind of publish as you go, and then you could also, kind of consolidate and get it together into a paper and publish that and have a record of that and build a portfolio and have all this cool stuff. But really just getting into these like micro publications gives you immutability for the research. So that if somebody, tries to rip off your thing that you're doing and steal your research, you now have these like proof points to show that you were the
hmm.
original creator, and get the credit you deserve.
So that's how you view these NFTs as like micro publications, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's one cool way to view it, right? You know,
That's really
you
neat.
design a molecule, and yeah, maybe a lot of the ones you design aren't great, so you never make the NFT, but maybe a few of them you actually do mint into an NFT, and then it
And then it's
goes
immutable,
into
and
the
you say,
rest of
"Hey,
the
look at this
DeSci.
progress that I made on this creation, the structure of the protein, right, or structure of the
Well, so this
molecule."
is how I think DAOs should be run. Like, I don't know if you've been following any of the science DAOs that are out there, but a lot of them really revolve around like giving people funding, which I think is cool. And you mentioned that there's like a few things, right? Like access to funding and having more public access to the research that's being done and like transparency on that.
Hmm.
That's all great. Um, but like the big thing that we see is like when people make things, right, like how do you build the infrastructure for them to make and publish so that it ensures accountability and transparency. And I think if you fund and like give somebody decentralized dollars to publish and their research, right, it shouldn't just be a paper at the end of the day. Like this should be going into a team that is constantly micro publishing and constantly sharing this and spreading the science and not keeping it all locked up in an ivory tower, which is, I believe, what a lot of the impetus of people in DeSci are all about, which is breaking down the silos and getting the research out there back into the people, especially if it's been like crowdsourced and crowdfunded. Like
No
that
doubt.
absolutely needs to be, accessible to
You
everyone.
can't have it open source the whole way and then have one company just take it at the end, right?
Well, so this goes in, yeah. I mean, what are the financial models that you could build
Yeah.
as like a decentralized DAO? Like, you still have 1 year of patentability after you publish and release information about a molecule, for instance.
Okay.
So, technically somebody else could try to file a patent before you, and it'd be a really messy thing with courts depending on what country you're in.
Mm.
So I still think that the legal system needs to figure out a lot of what's going on with like the first to file system. It used to be first to invent when you patented.
Okay.
Currently it's a first to file. So whoever submits the patent to the patent office
That
office.
seems
So
silly though,
we
right? Because then you're almost rewarding people for stealing IP.
Yeah, so there's like famous lawsuits about like CRISPR and stuff going on about all this as well.
Hmm.
Which yeah, you could look into that. Um
Yeah, I'm familiar with what CRISPR is doing as a company when it comes to genome, work.
Well, there's a few different companies. I mean, there's a bunch that are doing different types of CRISPR work, and the actual research about CRISPR was like originally patented for like one thing, but then somebody put it into human cells, and then they patented for other stuff. So,
Interesting.
yeah, and that's all based on like file times, and like somebody had like fast tracked their patent and they got it approved sooner, but somebody had like started the process for a non-fast track patent, and so
This
there's
sounds a
all this.
lot like the centralized world just messing up our decentralized utopia.
Exactly, right. So we're big believers in first to hash, right?
Yeah,
First to file, first to invent, like that's also archaic, so 20th century. First to hash, right? Hash it on chain, you're the first one,
that's it. You got
right?
it first.
Immutable
Exactly.
proof, right? You
Yeah,
don't need a centralized third party
right.
saying that he said, she said. It's boom, it's on the
Yeah,
blockchain.
exactly. So how do we get around that? Like, what's the solution? Like, when you look at, for example, this amazing NFT collection. So I've got your nanomolecular keys project up here. So people are building, they're doing their micro publications, as you say, and learning off of each other in this kind of decentralized, open source way, and ideally coming to some awesome solutions, right? So let's say they find a cure for something awesome. What does that look like on the patenting side? And will the fact that the process was so transparently laid out, will that help you in that final patent process? And will it guarantee that the people who helped make it the final product are all getting compensated fairly?
Yeah, yeah. So this goes into, I guess, the goals of a DAO, right? Because if a
Mm,
DAO is trying to do pure open source research, they could just publish a ton of prior art online and use that to just invalidate anyone else that might create a patent in the future.
mm,
And they just go with the complete copyleft approach and just say, hey, like we're making these things to benefit the world, and if anybody wants to manufacture them and do it, like yeah, you could do that. But with that being said, there's very expensive clinical trials that you typically need in order to get a drug approved through the
For sure.
FDA, to prove that it's both safe and effective. So I still think that you need a process to prove that things are safe and effective. And yeah, having a complete Wild West, I just made this random chemical, you want to order it off the deep web and try it. That's a recipe for disaster,
Right. Most
and
definitely.
unless you could actually make sure that these things are going to be safe and effective. So, that being said, if the DAO's goal is then to just be a biotech company and to just do it in a decentralized way, like a decentralized biotech, they could file a patent. I'm not sure what legal entity they would file under, but they could file as individuals, whoever was involved in the
Right.
invention process. They could assign that to the DAO and some, I don't know, legal contract, work with the lawyer. Not too familiar with, how exactly that would be
Yeah,
worded, but
no,
you
just
need
yeah.
lawyers for all this. And so eventually, right, yeah, they would have this patent owned by the DAO. Maybe even they tokenize the patent or NFT the patent or something like that, but it's owned by the DAO. And so the DAO, let's just say, has done some contract research. Like I think that if you have a hit molecule in a decentralized DAO, and then you want to test it and manufacture it and all that, you don't really need to rely on like everyone at their like home offices like making these things. You could actually crowd fund a contract research organization to do it for you. So you just need to get money together, and then you just call up one of these companies that manufactures and tests different compounds. This is just how biotech works right now.
Okay.
And they'll do it for you. And so you don't really need a wet lab. And so you could have like a complete software DeSci DAO, and then just be contracting out to CROs to actually do the synthesis and the testing. And if it looks like it's really good, like it's gotten really good assay hits and, other studies that you've been doing and, probably do animal testing. I'm not a big fan of animal testing. I see it as something that is necessary in the current paradigm of how the FDA has laid out like all this. But
Mm,
personally, like vegan, completely like plant-based diet, all of that. Animal testing, I'm trying to reduce as much as possible by simulation and like computer software for biotech, which is what Nanome's all about
for
as
sure.
well. And so, anyways, you would have to do testing, and
Yeah.
eventually it gets into humans and clinical trials. And that's going to be super expensive. But you could crowdsource, clinical trials, and then you could also,
And in order to
try to.
crowdsource,
What?
you'd have to have decent paper trail kind of showing all the research you've done and why it's valid, right? And that goes back to the
Blockchain
usefulness of these
trail.
micro pure or micro publications as NFTs, right? Being able to really just package that all up and see that this was all done transparently. Here's the research and how it's built on, other research from prior.
Yep,
So that's a big
exactly.
advantage you're seeing there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
On that science DAO, I hadn't actually been told of any science DAOs yet. Is there one that you're familiar with that's kind of really doing like what you're describing? Basically, being more than just funding, right? It's about actually trying to push forward, scientific discovery, I guess, for humanity essentially, and less about just funding specific projects.
No, I haven't personally, and I'm
Yeah,
kind of frustrated at that because there's all these like big, famous-ish, in the semi-famous in the little tiny DeSci community here,
right.
DAOs that are working supposedly on cool stuff like aging, and longevity and all that, and
Mm,
it's kind of silly in my eyes to just be like, hey, we're a DAO that cares about this, and we're just gonna like give funding to people. Like, cool, you're tackling like 2% of the pie. Like
right.
that's great, and like getting people funding and like funding cool research is amazing, and having that research shared is going to be great. But
Mm,
yeah, no one's really going in with this full transparency molecular development research.
yeah,
And
because
I've hopped on a few discords, and I've tried to talk with people about this and try to get information on like if people are from working on like structure-based drug design or like what their approach is ever and for developing these, and been kind of disappointed. Like I'm not sure if the people that are in these DAOs really know a lot about biotech development. Like I've been hoping for people that just wanted to make a biotech and happen to have it decentralized in the format of a DAO. But yeah, I'm not seeing
I
anything
think we're
like
gonna
that
have to get
yet.
a Nanome DAO. I think that's the only solution. You got to start pulling your community
Yeah.
together.
We've
um,
been talking about yeah, doing like a biodefense DAO, where we, yeah, really focus on preventing the next pandemic, or at least coming
Biodefense.
up with
Oh,
treatments and stuff for all the different viral vectors that are out there that could really cause some damage to humanity. Like I think, yeah, as an overall mission, like there's so many people working on cancer. We work with a lot of different companies working on cancer. But traditionally, I think overlooked and overfunded has been this, preventative virology research
mm,
where, you would be modeling proteins. So, again, no biosafety level 4 lab here. You would just be modeling the proteins and coming up with either, potential novel treatments, or trying to understand what drugs you could repurpose, before the pandemic would ever hit.
no doubt.
And so,
Actually, where I'm
yeah, yeah,
located
but
in central Canada here, we have a bio level 4 lab here, and it's a. I think they actually found the. They did the cure for Ebola. We ended up finding the final cure for Ebola here too. It's the regional
awesome.
prairie location here. So yeah, it's interesting how important though that is, and it's interesting that there is no DAOs working on that, or science DAO. I think what you just described from what you've seen so far in the science DAO space sounds to me like they're basically just DeFi with the Phi going towards science. That doesn't sound as
That,
much in the
yeah,
DeSci vein of what you've been describing.
That's kind of how it's starting.
Mm,
And I think it's cool. It's got to start somewhere, and everyone cares about, money and all this in the
mm-hmm.
blockchain world. And I think that that's fine. I'm a technologist. Like I've been in a blockchain for so long, like I stopped caring about like the monetary value of every coin. It's just like, hey, like how can blockchain actually impact science in the world? Yeah, besides just like the monetary aspect. But obviously, you got to get funding to the right people, and funding new projects is going to add some value. So, like, I don't mean to completely trash the other DAOs. Like, they are doing a service and they are doing
For
cool
sure.
stuff. It's just like so early compared to the potential of where this all could go.
Yeah, and I think you've identified a really serious gap, and I can't help but see similarities when I look at the NFT side, and I'm looking at artists, and I'm looking at the creation and again the creator economy value of that peer-to-peer transaction. It's not as much of like, oh well, my NFT collection is going to be worth 5 ETH tomorrow or something, so that's the side that we're up against. And I think honestly, like 80 to 90% of the narrative about NFTs is focused on really just chasing that hype and finding that financial, going to the moon and all of that. But we're really focused on here at Web3 Warriors that peer-to-peer connection and what it means and the implications, and specifically looking at that science perspective. Those are huge implications, huge ramifications for the research process, and really building out, whether it is the exact kind of project you're talking about with microbiology, and like really being able to use VR and the metaverse and the blockchain to do all of this research on a new level, or even more basic scientific discovery, and being able to bring that onto the blockchain and work, on an international level and share information, like you were just saying, basically on any number of scientific fronts, right? Being able to actually track that process of the research in every step of the way if they do it on the blockchain through NFTs. I like that, micro publications as NFTs. That's really cool.
And to one of your points, like way early on in the podcast, yeah, you were talking about, you could either pay like, $50 to download this paper, or you could just email the author and they will gladly give it to you. They'll be like, oh great, someone's interested in my research, here's the paper. Like, they
Exactly.
don't benefit when you pay the $50 to download their paper. They see 0 cents of that. Like, they're not getting a kickback or anything. So there really is no incentive to be doing this, other than it's just the way that it's done. There's
Yeah.
prestige. Kind of, if you publish it in prestigious journals, it might advance your career. But you need to often pay to even publish in these journals, and especially if you want to make it so that people don't need to pay to download your paper, you need to pay even more. Yeah, we've published papers, and we paid more just so that people could have access to the paper without emailing us and without paying $50.
Wow.
But then it's like we're fronting the cost. But
Right.
ideally, you just publish these things, and like, sure, you pay the gas fee to actually publish it. But with layer twos and Ethereum 2.0, like hopefully that's pretty negligible pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you're familiar with Arbitrum. I'm working with the DAO Dream Conduit. Shout out. And we just launched our first NFTs for the DAO for the smart contract, and we did a lot of research. We were initially looking at Polygon, and we ended up going
Oh
with
yeah.
Arbitrum. And that was actually one of my questions here: is what blockchain are your NFTs living on right now, and maybe if you have a preference or something looking into the future, where you want to build, maybe a DAO or any preference basically when it comes to blockchain.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'll give you a little bit more of my blockchain lineage, right? So I
All
got
right.
into Bitcoin like way back in the day, and then Ethereum I found about in like 2015, and I was like, dude, this is so cool. Like it's like Bitcoin, but you could like code on top of it, right? And you can make your own smart contracts. Like this
Mm,
is awesome. So I bought some in order to actually develop for it. And so our Matrix platform that we launched in 2017, that's actually fully deployed and live on the main Ethereum blockchain right now.
wow.
All these NFTs are also Ethereum based. I'm a big layer two believer for the short term future. Like I think we're right on the precipice of layer twos like really taking off.
Mm-hmm.
I've used Polygon. I do like Polygon. I have some NFTs on Polygon.
Mm-hmm.
I like Loopring. I like what they're doing. Immutable X. Zero X as well. I'm not sure how deep in the NFTs they're going, but they're doing a lot of layer two type of stuff on Zero X as well. So yeah, I'm a big believer in like the Ethereum ecosystem. Uh, so I hold a lot of other random little bits of tokens just because I think that these things can be cool. And
Mm-hmm.
I also, sorry, I skipped it, but I got into Dogecoin mining and stuff like back in the day too. And that was fun, just little like hobbyist
You went
GPU
full
mining
degen for a little
basically.
bit there.
What?
Did you go full degen for a little bit there?
Well, see, the thing is, in 2013, 14, it wasn't even DGen. It was just like, oh, hey, this is like Litecoin with a meme on it.
No
And
doubt.
like, there was a really cool community. Like, people used to just like tip each other like 100 Dogecoin on Reddit for just making a funny comment. Yeah, the memes were really positive at the time. Nobody cared about the money. Dogecoin was worth point zero zero zero
Right.
zero zero one, whatever, and nobody cared. It was just it was there for the memes, and it was meant to be quickly gotten rid of.
Mm,
Like if you had a bunch of Dogecoin, it was like, this is like $5 worth of Dogecoin, like whatever. Here's a dollar, here's a dollar, here's a dollar. Like you just
yeah.
kind of spread it, and it was more of like an onboarding crypto for other people that were interested. So I don't know if it was full degen back then. Yeah, I think Dogecoin's been kind of hijacked by some people
Yeah.
in the media on Twitter, right? That are like, oh, you could buy a car with Dogecoin, and then not actually letting me buy a car with Dogecoin. So I find that a little bit disappointing that
Yeah.
people are doing that. You know who you are.
That's right. Yeah, I know. Some
Yeah,
people have too
but
much
I don't know, man.
influence.
If Tesla accepts Dogecoin for their cars, I do think it'd be super cool. So I don't know, maybe I do have a little bit of a degen side of me still because it's cheap to transact in Dogecoin. Like I could buy a cup of coffee with Dogecoin and spend less than 2% of the price of coffee on fees,
No
which
doubt.
is comparable to credit cards and all that. So
Yeah.
most things, Bitcoin, Ethereum, like you're going to be spending a lot more on fees than ever in the cup of coffee. And so you end up with a system that doesn't really work for small day-to-day transactions. So that's why I still kind of believe Dogecoin has some future, just because it's
Interesting.
practical. It works as a peer-to-peer currency, and it's got fun memes.
Yeah, it's
Nobody
got the
else has got
memes.
the
It's
fun
got the
memes.
the low fee for sure, and yeah, it's basically Lightning but
Yeah.
with a cool meme.
Yeah. But yeah, with layer twos and Ethereum 2.0 and all that, like I'm a bigger believer in that actually being like a good solution for
Okay.
reducing fees and getting
Yeah.
more big
No,
usage on
I
that.
agree.
So
I
yeah.
agree. And maybe so with your preference being Ethereum, and obviously it was part of just the fact that you were there when Ethereum was actually created, and you see the value in basically having that smart contract living on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that Ethereum is also the most reliable, maybe for the type of kind of sensitive work that you're doing from a decentralized perspective? Like, do you think that because the network is sufficiently decentralized, obviously nodes everywhere, I think at this
Mhm.
point it's pretty safe to say, bar some like really extreme scenario where the board did something horrible, but even then I don't think they could actually shut down the network, right? As far as the Ethereum board. So do you think that it's the most decentralized and kind of reliable blockchain for the type of work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most like tried and true blockchain implementation out there that has the, biggest, best developer community around it, and probably the most amount of attack vectors and hackers that are targeting it. And it's been proven to be pretty robust. And, unfortunately, there have been some smart contracts that have not been coded properly and that have had vulnerabilities, whether it's from the original Ethereum DAO,
Right.
or if it's from all of the oh man, what was that one wallet? There was that wallet that had the faulty code where somebody killed it, and then everyone lost their money because it was all locked up.
Oh shoot, I
So
heard about
so
it. I don't
yeah,
know.
there's been what?
I think I heard about it, but I don't know which wallet, what that
Yeah, it
was.
was like 2017, 18 type of
Okay.
stuff. So there's been a bunch of attacks, and every time it gets attacked, people learn and do new things and try to be more robust about it. So in that regard, yeah, I'm a big believer in Ethereum, and just the fact that it has been shown to be a very robust blockchain that is adaptable, and it has been continually improving.
No doubt. Very cool. That's awesome. I'm glad. I like to hear anyone defending or promoting Ethereum and its decentralization.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
watch out for the ETH killer. The ETH
yeah,
killer is yeah, which one? Like
right.
ETH 2.0 is its own ETH killer. Like
Yeah, and even
it's
that they've been
good.
talking about for years. We'll see when it actually comes out. I mean, the layer twos seem to be a good solution too, and ETH 2.0 is bringing like full proof of stake to Ethereum. But I think even Vitalik was saying it's not like it's going to remove the gas fees per se. In the end, it's still going to require probably some kind of layer two function if you're really trying to avoid gas fees. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're believers in that. Like, yeah, I think that like right now everything that we've made is like a layer one, but I think that the future is going to be layer twos.
Most definitely, yeah, it's exciting. So, what has been the response from kind of the broader scientific community? Like when you're looking at pitching this concept, are you facing any resistance? Does everyone kind of just see the value in being able to do this molecular kind of engineering or molecular work in VR and on the metaverse, and specifically with NFTs? How has been kind of the traditional reaction from scientific corners?
Yeah, well, scientists are skeptical people, right? So people with PhDs, they spend many years in research, invalidating and validating different hypotheses, and they approach it very logically. And I think that there's really an aha moment when you put the VR headset on a scientist and they say, "Oh wow, this wasn't just a bunch of flim flam. Like I'm here and my molecules in front of me, and I could actually see new details that I didn't actually understand fully looking at it on a 2D screen." Like they convince themselves by just experiencing it. So that happens a lot with the virtual reality side. I'd say with the blockchain side, we're not quite there yet, where people could just kind of like experience it, use it, and be like, oh yes, this makes so much more sense. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're kind of building towards a new paradigm, which is decentralized science, which is not a blockchain feature within a VR application for pharmaceutical scientists that currently use the VR application. I'd say they're a little bit less interested in this because they do so much in-house work that's not shared and that's not public, which is fine. Like, yeah, they could just license our virtual reality program and keep doing that. But I just think that there's a future model that could be cool and decentralized, and you could have all these biotech DAOs spinning up, and those are the people that I want to build the blockchain infrastructure for. But unfortunately, like that community is just barely coming together now.
Mm-hmm.
With the whole DeSci community, we're still super early on. It's only 2022. I think that in the complete DeSci blockchain roadmap, like people are barely getting into the science metaverse and virtual reality today. Private key management with virtual reality is like an order of magnitude more complex than private key management on like 2D medium. Like,
Really, eh? Why is that?
there's some problems I think with people inputting like private keys into different like VR applications and like signing transactions. And I do think that if you had a desktop wired VR headset, and that if you like copy and pasted into your desktop, and then and we implemented a feature like this into one of our applications called CalcFlow.
Mm.
CalcFlow is like a 3D mathematics program. And so our idea was like, all right, let's use CalcFlow as a test bed for all this DeSci stuff. and we'll have people just kind of coming up with new math equations for like different 3D objects, and publish those and mint those on the blockchain. So we did use this as a test bed for like how people would interact with the blockchain in a VR headset, and really there was like so much like desktop based mouse and keyboard setup involved in it that I think that most people like tuned out and weren't really into it. And
Yeah, it's tough. Hey, it
yeah,
goes back to that
putting your
point
private
about
keys into some random app, yeah, I'm not sure who's gonna do that. So generally, you probably want to make a new hot wallet and then just put like, I don't know, a couple bucks worth of ETH in there so you could pay for gas fees as you do a little, maybe a couple bucks at the time, but obviously you'd have to put in more for gas fees now. And
right,
yeah, I
right.
just think it's still too early. Like, yeah, we built the infrastructure, and I don't know. It's just like there's nobody, like I said, even doing the DAOs that are trying to actually do these micro
Mm.
publications. Like a lot of the work out there is just like funding research groups, which is cool. It's just like not on the blockchain yet. So it's weird to balance basically building, current virtual reality based solutions for current modern day biotech and pharmaceutical professionals that help improve patient care, patient lives. All that we think is fantastic. There's this other side of like, all right, building future infrastructure for future decentralized biotech, that's going to be, doing all these things probably in virtual reality as well, but using the blockchain as this immutable layer that, could be more open and public, and give that accountability of, who did what when.
That's interesting. On your point about needing to kind of open a separate app to manage the private keys, I guess that's kind of going back to our point about user experience, right? And user
Mhm.
interface. And when it gets a little clunky and you have these added requirements that confuse people, they just
Yeah,
shut down altogether. So
exactly.
that's something you're kind of evolving, right? And maybe that's something you got to take back to the drawing board and be like, how do we make this private key function more simple for people, right?
We basically just kind of, so the way we ended up implementing it is just like web browser based dApp, where
Mm,
you do everything with your private keys with like MetaMask and things that are, more familiar to a lot of people.
mm.
And you just upload the file that you made in VR. So instead of like being in VR, making a file, clicking a button, having it hash, technically you could open up a web browser in VR, but that's its own discussion. Right now, it's just you download the file and then you upload the file through a web browser, and it's a rough implementation. Like it's not fully streamlined, but at least it works because people know how to download files, they know how to upload files, and some people know how to use MetaMask. So it's just, that was the practical
For
implementation
sure,
that we
for
thought of.
sure. Learning pains, and yeah, like you say, kind of waiting for the space to catch up to you, I guess, which I think is something we're all used to in Web3. Frankly, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
like,
yeah.
yeah, we've been waiting for a long time. Like, I always kind of thought like, hey, at some point in my life, like, blockchain and Bitcoin, like this is gonna be big. And so I was just been, hodling, back in the day. I did some trading, right? But then eventually I was just like, yeah, hodl because this is like a super long term type of thing.
Hmm.
And now people have started recognizing the virtual reality aspect. And so it's been 7 years, since we started up the company.
That's
And in the early
amazing.
days, VR was not where it was, and now like VR is actually like getting picked up and becoming mainstream. And I think that blockchain is going to lag behind that a little bit, where maybe in a couple more of these like 4 year hype cycle runs, people will just be using it more ubiquitously in their day-to-day life for various things, and like everything will become tokenized, and then it'll be really obvious of like, oh, we should have been tokenizing molecules in scientific research like way early on.
Right.
And then that's where we're going to be like, hey, like we've had this stuff for a long time and you just haven't been using it,
Yeah.
and we've been making it better, and like here it's just like it's on a platter ready for you to go, like please
Beautiful.
just take it.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing it to our podcast, and hopefully we can find some more ears for you. And science in Web3, I think, is a fascinating conversation, but I think it'll even be acknowledged for the fascinating conversation it is more as we move into the future. To your point, so this podcast will be there forever, and hopefully more people will be able to listen and kind of see how ahead of the times you really are here. So if I'm gathering correctly, it is a little bit of a hard sale right now still when you're looking at really trying, even though it's clear, you look at it on the screen and you see people blowing up these molecules to be able to see and work with in real time. It's obvious what the value of that is, right? But for, like you say, obvious reasons, skeptical people and people not wanting to learn new technology, whatever the case may be, it's still a bit of a hard sell, you'd say?
Yeah, so on the virtual reality side, and you don't need the blockchain side to do any of the
Right,
virtual reality
right,
stuff. Like it's kind of an optional add-on layer that you could also do for immutability, accountability.
for sure.
But yeah, on the VR side, like people are finally starting to get it, and so it's becoming less of a hard sell and more of just like yeah, well, if we could get them to try it, then they'll probably be convinced that it's going to add value because the platform's just gotten so much better and technology's gotten so much better. But yeah, the blockchain side, I'd say is a hard sell. Everyone like getting I don't know, people to adopt it without charging them, like right, you can just use it online.
Right.
Just getting more usage. Yeah, like it's definitely been a hard sell to just get
So
people into it and doing it.
okay, so let's say we got some enterprising, innovative scientists listening, and they want to join and they want to be part of this project and help Nanome build out and specifically the blockchain side of things, right? Because I really think, to your point, that's a really amazing kind of. Or how long have you been doing the blockchain side? Sorry, before I get to that question, because you said you've been around 7 years on this VR Nanome project. How long have you had the tokenized angle?
Yeah, so just a little bit about my personal stuff, I guess, again. So 2014, I got the VR headset. I turned off my Dogecoin miner, kind of put all that aside and was just like, all right, I'm not going to be doing anything in blockchain for a bit. I need to focus down on all this virtual reality stuff.
Mhm.
And so you really started going about it and got co-founders about, and of course, everything I talked about with my co-founders was also involving blockchain, like because we would just like chat and hang out and be like, yeah, VR is like cool, it's the future and all this, and it's like, oh my God, did you see the Bitcoin price today? Like, oh, it's going to $1,000. Like, this is crazy. Like, so we had all been into Bitcoin and independently, like super interested in blockchain.
Nice.
And so we always kind of talked about different things that we could do and tried to I tried not to. Like I tried to be like, no, we gotta be like focused and like on all this virtual reality stuff, but it just kept pulling us back. And of course, we just kept onboarding more fun, crazy people, I guess, that were
Nice.
into new technology. Crazy at the time because we were early, but now it's just kind of mainstream. People that were into VR and molecules, I guess, also happen to be in the blockchain, and so we just kind of kept getting more people in our network and our community that agreed with us that there were things that we could be doing with blockchain and tokenizing things, and we just kept thinking about it. And we were like, all right, well, this crowdsourcing thing, that'd be cool, and so started kind of getting the idea for that 2016. 2017 was when we were like, all right, let's do it, let's go live, and so that was when everyone
Wow.
else was doing it anyways, but. Yeah, so early 2017, I think we published a white paper. And then later on that year, we launched the alpha platform, subsequently upgraded it to the beta platform and deployed it on the main chain. But yeah, so yeah, 2017, been around for that world for like 5 years. But yeah, I
So
think it's still got
2017 is
some
when you
time
even
to grow.
like your
So what?
first tokenized pieces, like your first NFTs, were put together in 2017.
Well, so okay, so this goes into what we did versus NFTs. So NFTs weren't really much of a thing in
I was thinking, I
2017
was like, if
until
you were
like
on NFTs already in 2017,
yeah,
you were way ahead.
so we had started architecting the platform before NFTs were really a thing. And
Mm,
so we basically made the platform mirroring what NFTs do anyways. Like you store the hash on chain, and then you have a reference storage in like IPFS of the actual file, which is that's what an NFT is anyways. So we didn't actually architect the original platform with minting NFTs. You would just kind of hash on chain and publish, but it wouldn't be in the 721 format. And I think that that's an area for improvement that we could still be doing. These NFTs that you're saying are just kind of like an independent like project to do actual like Nanome licenses. So if you buy an NFT, you actually get 3 years of Nanome professional usage. And so this NFT kind of acts as a license key. But then it's also a play because like people talk about like lock and key, like a drug fitting into a binding pocket being a key. But they are also actually license keys for Nanome. So this is like an independent little NFT project spin out. I do think that the future platforms that we're building should be conforming to the standards so they could plug in with the rest of the ecosystem. But yeah, these are just cool artwork, molecular keys, known molecules, theobromine that looks like you have It's found in chocolate. It's like an analog to caffeine and adenosine.
Nice. So it looks
Yeah,
like they're not listed right now, and I guess the unlockable content is where you would get that license information, and then also
exactly.
the VR file. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Did we put the VR? I do think that we put the VR files into these, and so if you get the NFT, you'll be able to get the license key, and yeah, you could experience all these molecules in virtual reality.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. So that's really interesting. So your team is passionate about blockchain and pushing it forward, despite maybe not getting the mass adoption that you're hoping for yet. But none of us are mass adoption's a long ways away, I think. Right?
Yeah, but it's a steadily moving train. Like, it'll get there eventually, and
Yeah.
it's just like who's getting on board when, and the earlier you get on board, like the more benefit that you have in any type of network, whether that's Twitter or some of these blockchain networks. Just really like getting in early has been awesome. And right now we're super early on DeSci, and so there's so many ways to be getting in early, whether it's being a community contributor, or starting up your own DAO, or starting up your own blockchain resources for science DAOs. This the ecosystem super early, and it's going to keep evolving.
Super early. I wanted to ask if you could give like a elevator pitch definition of DeSci. What would it be? Like a quick
Yeah.
definition.
So science traditionally has been, funded by centralized entities and close guarded until the time of publication. And even then, the intellectual property is often owned by very bureaucratic systems that, might not be, open to licensing this to everyone. Decentralized science really opens that up. So if people are paying for research, people should be able to see that research, understand what's going on with that research, share that research, and hopefully be able to benefit from that research. So you should, open it up. You should give it access to that scientific information to everyone, because this was funded a lot of the time publicly. And if you want to be able to rapidly mobilize people to cure the next pandemic, then you need to have good infrastructure to allow many people from around the world to all be contributing in very quick and meaningful ways. And so decentralized science and the blockchain is a great infrastructure rail for making that happen, and opening up science and technology to the masses. Virtual reality on our end, science metaverse is the way to democratize access to all this by giving people more understanding, more information about what's going on with computational molecules and systems like that. And ideally, this all comes together to build, the science metaverse with people, making new drugs in virtual reality, publishing that as NFTs, um, sharing those NFTs across multiple decentralized science platforms, and ideally, helping get better medicines to people around the world for a lot cheaper, and also prevent and treat future pandemics.
Beautiful. That's so on point. And I think about, again, it's interesting because I hear about mass adoption a lot. And I frankly don't think that it's really that necessary when I look at the creator side and the artist side of things. I'm like, people will adopt it when they adopt it. But this is the first project I think I've seen where it will truly benefit from mass adoption, because scientists, as you say, are generally skeptical. So a lot of them might not even be wanting to do stuff on chain until everybody's doing stuff on chain, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just really interesting this is the first time I think I've been seeing a project that is like gonna benefit humanity when humanity wakes up and realizes the benefit of doing it this way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it'll be the next pandemic. Like, I kind of thought this pandemic was a bit of a wake-up call. We tried to have some blockchain-based crowdsource efforts, but what we saw was actually people were up for publishing their molecules on a centralized server with no accountability of who created what first,
Yeah.
just because the world was crazy, and you had to come
And
up
that's
with
the way
things.
they'd
And
been doing
so,
it, right?
yeah, what?
And that's the way that they've been doing it, right?
Well, actually, this one was a bit different. Like, there were actual like open crowdsourced public efforts,
Oh.
but it was all like centralized,
Hmm.
and so I guess it was good, unexpected, but there can be problems that arise from that. Like if somebody kind of stole each other's work and you don't have any accountability,
Hmm.
that could suck. So I kind of want to see how those things played out, and like if any of these molecules that people had crowdfunded or sorry, crowdsourced actually had any usage, and if they did, like, are they monetizing, and then
Right.
who's actually, quid pro bono, right? Like who benefits?
Hmm. And
And
maybe
so
there's no way to know that
what?
because it's not on chain, right? Like, how are we going to actually find that out? Get to
Yeah,
audit it or something.
yeah, cui bono, cui bono. Yeah, so who benefits? And so, yeah, if it's not on chain and you just uploaded your molecule to somebody's company, and that company just takes your molecule and makes, $1 billion and
Right.
never throws any of it back to
Right.
you, yeah, that's a case study in how we should have been using blockchain.
I love it.
So yeah,
That's so
maybe, yeah, in the
perfect.
next pandemic, hopefully there's no pandemic. Like,
Right.
I would love for the world to be great and rosy and fantastic, but I'm kind of a realist, and there's so many biological threats and vectors out there, that I think it's entirely possible for us to have another pandemic, another novel virus escapes into the population and becomes a problem. And if we're not prepared for it and we don't have treatments lined up, and things like that already ready to go, then it's going to be a repeat. And we're going to see a lot of really sad losses in the world, and human capital and lives, just like happened in the current pandemic with
Yeah.
COVID-19. Yeah.
That's amazing. DeFi to the or DeSci, I should say, decentralized science to the rescue. I believe
Yeah,
it.
let's go.
That's
DeSci.
why honestly you hooked me in, and I get some random requests for the podcast, and I generally don't. I'm not that interested in them, but I had an education from Principal Z last week talking about the impacts of the blockchain for education to help society, and with science and the impacts of blockchain to help science specifically and broader society by extension. In both cases, I'm really convinced, and it's been really amazing, eye-opening opportunity to kind of see what the potential is. And thank you, Steve, for bringing this to myself and to our audience here. And I really do hope that people will check out nanome.ai. That's your main website. But yeah, how does any scientists who really want to like maybe join your collective team or be part of your project pushing it forward on the blockchain, where should they sign up?
Yeah, they should send us an email. Just go to nanome.ai and send a support email, or just cold email hello@nanome.ai. And yeah, just mention that you're interested in joining like a DeSci DAO, and that you heard that we were spinning one up. The ideal case of how I want to run this thing is to actually not have it be a majority of my time sink. Like, I need to focus actually on other things in the company,
Mm-hmm.
but we'd be, getting community members together, get them in virtual reality, have a forum where they could communicate, share the structures, give them license keys for Nanome, let them interact in VR and the science metaverse together, and then just, encourage the publishing of all the molecules, and the sharing of all that as we go. And I guess there's a little bit of a vetting. Like, I don't know if you've been seeing these things on Twitter with like North Korean hackers trying to like infiltrate themselves into like different DAOs.
Man.
It's made me kind of paranoid, where I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, like,
There's
obviously you
always
got
got
to
to be
vet all these
something,
like
eh?
DAO community contributors, and make sure that they're not like North Korean hackers. So yeah, it's just like trying to, like, because biodefense can be a very interesting area, and there's a lot of things that you could do on the positive side in biodefense, which is really trying to counter all the negative things that other people could do.
Right.
So if you get ahead of the game and you get more positive things out there, then you could hopefully thwart any efforts of any of the negative side of that, bio attacks, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, biodefense, I think just building a more robust system for humanity is absolutely critical. Yeah, it's on par with like having space lasers to shoot down meteors before they hit the Earth. Like, we need
Yeah.
biodefense.
Yeah. Don't look up, right? uh,
Yeah.
you got to be prepared. No, that's fascinating. Well, thanks. I have one more question for you. I do want to thank anybody who's in the live chat and watching. Much love. The last question we always ask our guests, though, is, and we've spoken to this a little bit during our conversation here, but what do you say to the people, maybe specifically the scientists, who are skeptical of Web3, skeptical of blockchain, and not fully understanding all of these implications that we've accurately identified here? How do you think we should try to pull them in? And what are you saying to scientists, I guess, when there is that hesitance to engage with the blockchain?
Yeah, it's not about the speculation of the price of your apes. It's not about having a cool JPEG that somebody could download and all that. It's about having infrastructure for having more science being done by people and more science being shared by people. And so blockchain is just it's a new technology. It's being used in a lot of different ways, and there are definitely like critical ways that it could benefit science. So think about more critical ways that it could benefit science. I'm sure there's different things that we haven't thought of, even though we've been thinking about this for a long time. And just try to think, hey, as a new technology, this is a hammer. Yeah, this hammer could be used for nailing things and doing other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool, and it's a tool that could be used in many different ways. It could be used for good, it could be used for bad. But think of the ways it could be used for good, and think of the ways that it could be used to benefit science and research. And that's what we've been doing. And on the virtual reality side, just try it out. Just try it out. Get a
Have
VR
fun, right?
headset,
Join us
download
in the
Nanome, like
metaverse.
you'll convince yourself.
Yeah, that's it. And as soon as you get that headset on and you're seeing your molecules and blown up in front of you, you'll be like, oh, I see the advantage of this. No, that's
Becomes really
awesome. And
clear.
yeah, definitely want to say any scientists listening or anybody interested in the scientific discovery movement and, trying to help out Nanome in any way you might be able to, shoot them an email at hello@nanome.ai, and they will get back to you. So yeah, we're hoping we can help you broaden that network and get some more people underneath you there at Nanome, because I think you're doing amazing work, God's work, really helping us push forward scientific discovery to help humanity, really. So kudos to you, man, and your whole team. It's really impressive.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it. And yeah, I just want to live in a better world, like a cooler world with better technology and better medicine and not have to worry about leaving my house and getting infected and potentially dying. Like,
No.
it's just we could be living in a much better world, and I want to make that world. I want to help make that world and live in that world. So we're doing everything we can, to help humanity and benefit society. And yeah, if you want to join, yeah, just shoot us an email, and we'll we'll see where you can help out.
All right, let's do it. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been a really awesome conversation. Thank you, everyone. We'll be live next Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern, as always, every Saturday with Web3 Warriors. And until then, we'll catch you in the metaverse. Take care. Thanks, Steve.
So yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, see you in the science metaverse.
All right, in the science metaverse. Peace out.